Good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway, under the lights as it prepares us for our sixth race of the second season of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. Seth Cole alongside of Lucas Cram. Lucas, it's the penultimate race. This is the last chance for drivers to position themselves for the championship battle next week at iRacing Superspeedway. So with that being said, not having to deal with the bumps of the older surface they had last week, what can we expect to see here tonight?
Definitely a lot more tight, close quarters racing. Obviously, Daytona last week was an awesome event, but coming here to the brand new surface, which actually has been changed a little bit this week with the season update on iRacing on Tuesday, I believe it was. Added the safeguards and the straightaway, kind of changed the track textures and surfaces a little. So maybe a little bit new element for these guys to kind of experience compared to what they ran in Daytona to start the season. But definitely a lot more packed up, and these guys are going to go for it all night long.
Got 21 drivers scheduled to take the green. Looks like only 20 will be taking the green at this point in time. Let's take a look at the starting lineup for tonight's D. Frank Cleaning Company 150. Alonso Chicano starting on the pole position. You brought up the fact that so far this season we have not had a multi-time pole sitter during the course of this schedule.
Yeah, this guy's, especially this group qualifying format, it's just really competitive. You kind of get different runs, and especially, different teams kind of working with each other. It just kind of shakes the whole thing up. And also, along with those, obviously gets us elusive bonus points and gets to start up, in front of the field. So definitely going to make an exciting start of this race. And yeah, every single week we've been a different pole sitter.
Saw the drivers that took time, 11 in total. Going to see some new names in the field, including Jovan Anderson, who's going to start on the outside of row 6. Shane Tyrion and Cody Lamas, who's making his debut there in row 7. Christopher Tate and the defending champion David Duran there in row 8. Vincent Valvano, Justin Duran in row 9. Dylan Poteet and Matthew Rodriguez going to bring up the final row. Jason Shuey was scheduled to roll off from 21st, but he is not on the grid at this point in time. 60 laps of racing here tonight at Daytona. Chicano up through the gears and gets us underway here at Daytona International Speedway.
Robert Kenny immediately pulls up alongside Michael Norman for that second position. Now looks to get to the rear bumper of the 95 machine as they work their way into turn number 1. Robert Kenny, we keep mentioning it every single week. Coming into this event, he's second in points, just 19 points behind the guy right there behind him, the 61 machine of Bronson Stafford. And these two, while they definitely have a lot of competition on their heels, they've been aggressive the last few weeks and continue to swap that points lead back and forth. As Alonso Chicano kind of got turned out to drive by both of them, and immediately on lap 1, a big push right over Bill Edwards. Bronson Stafford comes down into him, and they make contact, and somehow 95 machine keeps it on the racetrack and stays straight.
Boy, that was a gutsy block by Bronson Stafford because Chicano got a shove from Edwards, who in turn got a shove from Mike Tellier. They were moving on that inside line. Stafford goes to block the momentum, and that was very nearly our first caution on the first lap of this race.
Yeah, we're talking about the aggression that these guys have been showing, and immediately the 95 machine started the race on pole position, which you usually think would be a great position, kind of gets hung out to dry and immediately gets knocked off the racetrack, but great recovery by him and everybody else around him to avoid him and allow him to rear into the racetrack, because that could have been obviously a lot worse situation there, especially in the first lap of the race.
Ty Smith is the Valvoline car on the top side, and he's got Connor Holden right there behind him. Mike Tellier jumps up to the outside line now as Kenny and Stafford 1-2 in the points, but in reverse order of where they are running on the track right now. And as you mentioned, only a mere 19 points between those two. Let's bear in mind here as well, this is the first time since the second race of the year at Talladega that Robert Kenny did not come into the race as the points leader. Granted, the only other race was the other Daytona race, which was the daytime conditions here in the season opener where Jason Gracias won that race. Now kind of the hunted rather than the hunted. How does that change the mentality of the 34?
Definitely puts you in a better position to be more aggressive. When you have something to lose, you usually tend to have a little bit more, hesitancy of making moves and the aggression level of moves on the racetrack. And, coming to the race behind Bronson Stafford, he kind of understands that, he doesn't have a whole lot to lose, but a lot of gains. So obviously he's definitely going to try to lead every single lap, get as many bonus points as possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's possible for Robert Kenny just to kind of turn it up a tick and make sure that he continues to get as many points as he possibly can every single week.
Now, really, I believe the most points that you can gain if you get all the bonus points, you win the race, is around 80 points or so. So that's what drivers are looking to have at least as an interval or less between them and the points leader heading next week to still have a shot for the championship. Right now, 6 drivers sit in that position. Stafford, 19 points over Kenny, 26 points back Shane Tyrion. Michael Norman, who got his first win back in one of those Talladega duels, he's 34 points back. And then Bill Edwards and Jason Shuey just barely on the outside there, as they're 65 and 67 points respectively behind. But with Jason Shuey not in the field right now, not out on the racetrack, he could very easily be eliminated from championship contention by the time the checker flag waves this evening.
Yeah, really unfortunate luck. He kept trying to connect to the server to start, but unfortunately some connection issue kept kind of kicking him back out of the server. As you see up front now, that 5 machine getting pushed by his teammate there in the 4. Connor Holden got a nice push down into turn number 1, but 2 of those Valvoline cars, and he takes to the race lead now from Robert Kenny. But I mentioned those laps led. There's so many different bonus points in this series. There's 5 bonus points given to Alonso Chicano for getting that pole position at the start of the event, but also 10 bonus points for leading the most laps. Will go obviously to whoever leads the most laps in this event. Robert Kenny's trying to make his name that one on that list. But Mike Tellier, last week's winner of the old Daytona surface, was a huge push up the middle there for the 54 machine, of Tom Bourne, and he immediately jumps up to the outside of the 54 machine Robert Kenny for the race lead.
Yeah, Tom Bourne in the very familiar UAW colors that Joe Nemechek ran back in the Cup Series. Jerry Nadeau also ran that sponsorship for a while, pushing Mike Tellier. Now, we've given you the drivers that at this point in time, it could mathematically be in the championship hunt, but there are also 3 other drivers that look like if they won here tonight or at least had a decent night with a lot of bonus points, they could head into iRacing Superspeedway next week still in championship contention. Mike Tellier is one of those drivers. Joey Chapman and Vincent Valvano also. If they have solid points nights here and are able to get themselves within that 80 points between themselves and the points leader, they've got a shot. And ironically enough, the only one that was in the championship battle last season that could be in the championship battle in back-to-back seasons is the 97. Matthew Rodriguez, David Durand. These are guys that were in the championship battle last season, also Austin Grover. None of them have a mathematical shot of being in the championship picture here in season 2.
Yeah, and all those guys continue to kind of just have struggles every single week. We see David Durand get involved in some sort of incident. Last week he came just short of getting that victory there at Daytona, and obviously, unfortunately for him, this season, as far as the championship's kind of concerned, that's pretty much over for him unless something crazy happens. But as long as he can kind of get on a good stretch and recover a little bit, maybe he can carry that momentum into next season. But as I mentioned, Alonso Chicano drove all the way up from that incident there on the start after getting that pole position. He drove back up inside that top 10 now behind David Durand in that inside lane in that 24 machine. And he's kind of been taking a little easy, it seems like, as you see the front of the 3-wide race once again. He's kind of taking it a little easy, trying to hit onto his fast spur, obviously, for as long as he possibly can. But kind of holding that 5 machine, of Ty Smith, they've been kind of tailing their way up through the field, trying to get back to those lost positions that just lost a few laps ago.
Toyota's on the top, Toyota's on the bottom. It's Terrian trying to push Kenny down on that double yellow line, which, by the way, is not out of bounds in this particular series. So watch for drivers in the closing stages to duck down there and try and make some moves on the apron, especially on the back straightaway. Top side, it is the Bronson Stafford machine. He was getting a push from Mike Tellier, but now Mike, he's going to go to the middle with help from Ty Smith. No love for the GoPro Toyota Camry as he's going to drop to the back.
Yeah, not entirely sure that was intentional. It looked like he kind of just moved up out of the way, but after the last few weeks, it'd be hard to believe he just kind of decided to drop to the rear of the field. But Mike Tellier allowed it to go up the middle and now gets the first position on the outside lane as the 88 machine continues to push Robert Kenny down there on the inside. And now Mike Tellier, coming off that win from last week, obviously hoping to try to carry that momentum forward. And you mentioned the points battle. He's on 124 points out, which sounds like a lot, but if he gets a lot of those bonus points and get the checkered flag here tonight, that could totally change the picture heading into next week in the championship finale. So, obviously he's going to try to lead as many laps as possible and get as many of those points to close up that gap. As he gets a huge push down to the back shoulder by Ty Smith. Looks like he will clear Robert Kenny as he worked their way into turn number 3.
Only 9.5 laps into this 60-lap event, but already a couple of stories developing. We mentioned Joey Chapman, a driver that here tonight could put himself in the championship picture with a good run. He has lost the pack. He is all by his lonesome in the 19th position, currently running about 10 seconds behind the race leaders. And it looks like the 3 of Jason Shuey, as you were talking about, was having problems connecting in. He has finally connected in. He has gotten on the racetrack, albeit 7 laps down. Now, we have seen in the last couple of weeks, drivers having situations out of their control, namely the glitch with the faster pair on pit road, having to exit out of the server and come back in. They've been given back all of their laps. We'll have to see if under a caution period, if the 3's going to have to earn all those 7 laps back the hard way, or if he'll get some of them back if we end up having a period of pacing.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point, if he does get those wave arounds, that would put him obviously back in the event. The rule is you get wave around to your back, just 1 lap down. Is up front, some major contact up there, but obviously, 7 laps down. If he doesn't get any wave arounds from the race officials, obviously his race will be pretty much over as far as trying to get 10 for the race win. But interesting, another driver up front, like Tellier, who took that position away from Bronson Spafford, got up there, led a lap, got his bonus points, then decided to drop in behind David around the inside lane. And now kind of fall into the mid-pack. I haven't quite to the rear of this lead pack, but up front, Shane Tiering gets a huge run to the outside lane in front of the 5 machine at Ty Smith. And now he'll drag race the 34 machine down to turn number 3.
A little bit of connection problems there for David Duran, third on that inside line, the GoDaddy Chevrolet. So I would assume that's Brad Kozlowski throwback in a way. Kind of reminds me of when he drove that, was it a 5th part-time entry for Hendrick Motorsports back in the day. And so it's still Hendrick, still counts as Hendrick. It's just not the usual Gordon cars that we're used to seeing him run. One thing I want to do, I want to pick your brain here on something I observed with Robert Kenny through the Tri-Oval the last time by, when we saw that battle between him and Ty Smith and saw them kind of getting out of shape. It looked like when the 34 got its left sides down on that double yellow line, like the car was wanting to spin out. With the cooler track conditions here at Daytona, it's the first time this season we've run under nighttime conditions. Does that make that paint line down there just a little bit slicker?
I wouldn't have to imagine so, but definitely that, transition to that tri-oval, the apron obviously here at Daytona is completely flat. There's no banking whatsoever. So I'm sure, kind of getting caught your left sides in that tri-oval kind of gets the car a little unsettled. And I'm not entirely sure, or aware of what the texture changes were made, on the new Daytona surface that Iverson updated on Tuesday. But it wouldn't surprise me that little black, new pavement added down there. Maybe it has a little more grip and it kind of cut the car even more unsettled. But definitely, definitely some things these guys have to get adjusted to, especially that safe road in the backstretch, including that update. It doesn't seem like a whole lot of space taken out of the racetrack, but when you are used to running that extra lane up there and basically have it be taken away, it really does kind of feel like it narrows up the racetrack more. But on the opposite end of that, the positive note is that you don't have that safe road kind of stick out in the corner anymore, where it's a lot easier to catch, like we saw last week actually quite often at the old Daytona surface. But yellow line's definitely a lot more pronounced for these guys to see, but obviously in this league, there's no rule to go down there. As they go 3x3 out the race lead, Alonso Chicano back up here already in that middle of the fray there.
Yeah, we saw nothing like this last week. Drivers were not only fighting each other, but they were fighting that old track surface, and so a lot more comfort for the drivers here tonight in terms of how aggressive they want to be, the moves they want to make. And you can see how these two-car tandems, middle, top, and bottom, they're all seeming to keep the formation really tight, not a lot of moving around, which was the big talking point last week, because with all the moving around the old track surface, it was very difficult to get the bumpers lined up.
And started moving around some guys there for the race lead. Shane Terry in the middle kind of got a door bang right there for the 5 machine of Ty Smith on that high side. Not quite sure if he just kind of got loose and maybe misjudged where he was in the racetrack. But, now Shane Terry kind of decides to kind of jump down the inside lane and play a little bit safer. But all 3 of these Valvoline cars we've seen, all season long so far. These guys, poor machine kind of holding it was the outside safer Barry, but luckily he managed to hang on to it. But as Matt mentioned, those 3 Valvoline cars were working together very well ever since they joined the series, I believe, back in Talladega. And unfortunately, a bit of a mishap right there, but obviously they're going to try to regroup and drive way back in front here.
Bill Edwards jumps to the top. I don't know if that was to make a charge on the 34 to block the momentum of the 88 of Shane Terry, but it's going to push him to the front. Let's not forget that we ran this version of Daytona in the season opener where Bill Edwards finished second behind Ryan Hesgard, so he'd love to finish one position better here in the second trip to the current Daytona configuration.
Yeah, and especially for those points then, as you mentioned, you enter the night 5th in points, only 65 points back, so that could really change quickly if he was able to get just one spot better and come the checker flag here tonight for his first win. But and definitely throw himself into, if not the race league, pretty close to it. So the points lead, I should say. But on the outside, Shane Tyrion continues to get a push for Alonso Chicano. Alonso Chicano, we continue to mention every single week His unfortunate luck. It seems like he runs in front of us every single week, and immediately in this event, even after qualifying on the pole position, being knocked down to the grass there on the opening lap of the event. If he can just kind of put a whole race together and have a little luck go his way, maybe get that bad luck out of the way in the first lap, and good recovery so far by him. If he can just kind of get some of that bad luck out of the way, he'll be definitely after here contending for the race win.
Yeah, and he's right now only made 3 starts during the course of this season, but finds himself 12th in the overall standings. And a big reason for that, as you pointed out, he runs really well during the first half of the race, spends a lot of time out in front, so he gets a lot of those bonus points, but he's not able to cash in on the max points at the finish of the race, getting caught up usually, and incidents being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's Jason Shuey in the 3, going all the way down, actually into the grass to let the leaders on by. Now this venue, this particular nighttime Daytona race, was where the championship was decided last season. It's playing the part now in determining who's going to be in the championship battle next week at iRacing Superspeedway. So theoretically, if we're looking at the defending winner of this race, it would be the guy who went on to win not only the race but also the championship 1 season ago, the 24 of David Durant. Right now, he's just kind of riding back in the 12th position. But, while we talk about Robert Kenny being able to be a little bit more aggressive since he's not trying to preserve the points and he's trying to take it back, I look at some of these other guys as well, like a David Durant, like a Matthew Rodriguez, drivers that now this season are not in the championship battle. They can go out there, be aggressive, and try and do everything within their power to be able to take a checkered flag before the season comes to a close.
Yeah, most definitely. And, all of these guys kind of always want to stop them, and maybe they have some alliances together where, some of these guys want to help their teammates win the championship. Obviously, we saw a lot of that last season. Towards the end of the season, and teamwork definitely came into play where a lot of guys, were just kind of committed to pushing their teammates to, try to help out the championship fight and battle, which you'd always expect to see, especially on a plate track. But a little aggressive, blocking up front there. Shane Tyrion kind of threw a block there on Robert Kenny on the back straightaway. And, obviously Robert Kenny, one of those guys involved in that point situation, as you mentioned, while he's definitely going to be a lot more aggressive, the last thing he wants to see is, the outside wall and out of his windshield and, get involved in a pretty heavy incident. See Christopher Poteet there drop down on the apron out of harm's way and let his leaders on by. But, definitely, things can change very quickly in Super racing, obviously. And even with the fast super in the bank, if he gets involved in a couple of incidents, which we have yet to really see a whole lot of this season to date, that could change the entire championship picture very quickly.
I'll tell you someone that's going to be aggressive here tonight, and he is making the outside line work. That is Dylan Poteet, who's made a limited number of starts this season, but has been very impressive. Talked with them just before they got ready to climb into their race cars. This is his last start on the season. Unfortunately, work scheduling not going to be allowing him availability on Sunday night, so you know that he would love to, and what's going to be the last start of the season for the 31 car, he wants to park that Valvoline Toyota Camry in victory lane here this evening.
Yeah, most definitely. And once again, we saw all three of them kind of tandem up there on the outside, laying against the wall. And unfortunately, Connor Holden, for the second time tonight, caught that Swiftberg pretty hard and, damaged the right side of that Toyota Camry once again and fell back off of his two teammates. So, the 5 machine also gets in the fence right there off turn number 4. So this Steve Saferberg might be kind of playing into a bit of the hands here of the drivers and making some mistakes.
That just lost Dylan Poteet, both of his drafting partners, as he'll tuck in behind Kenny, pick up Michael Norman. Now the momentum and the numbers on the inside line. You saw the car down the apron through 3 and 4 that they lapped. That is Joey Chapman, and I barely noticed he had some damage on the front end of his race car, so I'm not exactly certain where that happened. I'm assuming around the opening laps or so. I'm almost wondering if maybe when we saw the block that Shane Tyrion put at the front of the field, I wonder if that stacked everybody up behind them, and maybe that's what led to that front end damage. But it's obviously really affected Joey Chapman ever since the start of this race, and now he finds himself second car 1 lap down, back in the 20th position.
Yeah, and this long green flag run is obviously the exact opposite of what he would like to see to try to catch, get that 81 machine repaired and get caught back up to the rest of the leaders. But speaking of this long green flag run, 21 laps now complete into this run. These guys, we see them about go, I believe, 25 to 30 laps that tank of gas here, restricted fuel, obviously in this league, and so these guys doubled up here on the back straightaway. Have to be looking at their fuel numbers and trying to plan out. I haven't seen a whole lot in this series. We saw it last season, I believe, for the first time in the championship finale at this very racetrack. And so, these guys not not a ton of experience on, pitting under green, but it's kind of been a lot more common as of late. And so, they're trying to sort themselves out, obviously, get together with their teammates to make sure they can pit up front as the 88 machine goes down on the apron through the tri-oval. Mentioned that transition, getting a little free for the 88 machine underneath Alonso Chicano, but they managed to kind of get it sorted back out into the turn one and get back to the double file.
They saw Chicano trying to keep the 88 pinned down there, forcing him to lift. It worked. He's going to stay third on that inside line. While all that was going on in the middle and inside line, Bill Edwards and Robert Kenny said thank you very much. They swung around to P1 and P2 and now leave Dylan Poteet and Chicano side by side for third.
Yeah, and all these guys up front obviously burn a lot more fuel in there and clean air. Well, we haven't seen any one particular driver lead most of this race so far. A lot of these guys, Bill Edwards, Robert Kenny, 88 machine, and Shane Tierney, and maybe even Alonso Chicano have been up here as of late. They're kind of burning a lot more fuel, obviously, being out of that draft, at least from a pull from the car in front of them. So they might have pit a little earlier, and that could kind of shake up their strategies as far as who they pit with, because obviously at Daytona, the more, as long as it's not a complete mess, the more cars you pit with, the better, to have a better, stronger draft and get back on the racing surface. So these guys are going to try to sort themselves out and pit together and get as many cars as a group as possible to make sure that they don't lose any time.
Granted, we've got twice the size field here this year at Daytona than we had in last year's season finale, but it definitely looks like it's a lot more difficult here tonight to be able to work your car to the front of the field and stay at the front of the field. We've seen the lead exchanged a number of times here, and we're not even halfway. Last season in the finale, David Durand dominated, for want of a better word, leading 47 of the 60 laps.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more of these guys is kind of understand that they're in a really, close point situation to where they have to go. There's no time to kind of just chill in the back and, hope that they wreck and you get some spots out of it. You have to be the one up front and trying to control the race and get as many bonus points as possible and keep the track position. So a lot of these guys, all really close on points, I think definitely contributes to that. And as you see double file race, so once again, David Durand with a huge run and decides to go in the middle and leave the 57 machine, Rafa Rodriguez, out on the outside lane, and now 31 machine and Dylan Poteet gets behind Bronson Stafford as they both kind of tan the way to the front.
I think the 57 of Rodriguez, I think they kind of checked up there with the bumping and it caught him out. David Durand was able to get to his inside and Rodriguez loses about 3 or 4 spots. Durand with a big move to the outside of Dylan Poteet. Nobody's going to go with him because all the babbling cars are going to stay in that middle line. And we've seen a couple of times.
No!
Oh no! Big hit! Durand is up and over into turn 1 as Bronson Stafford got hooked in front of the field.
David Durand's bad luck just continues right there. As soon as we mentioned to make that move for the race lead, contact underneath him just completely none of his own doing and sends him up and over. Bronson Stafford, our championship leader, heavy damage to that 61 machine. I have to assume that would be a faster pair right there for the GoPro machine.
Oh, there's a lot of drivers that might be taking on the faster pair. There is Bill Edwards. That car is going to have to literally limp back to pit road. Saw Michael Norman was involved. Durand was flipped upside down as he kind of got T-boned between Bronson Stafford and the outside safer barrier. Ty Smith in the 5 was collected up. Connor Holden was collected up. He's also crab walking back to pit lane. A lot of drivers with extensive damage. And these guys right here, this is an interesting race down the back straightaway. A couple of crab-walking machines, but they're trying to get back to pit road because they don't want to lose the time, potentially the lap of having to tow back to pit lane, as Dylan Poteet was the one to lead us back to caution. But there's a lot to unwrap here after the incident into turn 1 and actually carried over into the entrance of turn 2.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously when the race leader on the inside gets hooked up across the track, there's obviously nowhere else for the rest of these guys to go. But mentioned Bronson Stafford being the first guy to get turned and get pretty heavy damage to the 61 machine. On the opposite end of that, his championship rival, if you will, the 34 machine, Robert Kenny, while he kind of had some very minor contact at the right side of that Toyota Camry, for the most part, he came out of that pretty much unscathed. So that's a huge shift right there as far as the championship battle. One of the championship contenders having to take their on their faster pair, and the other one making it out barely on the other side.
Matthew Rodriguez, he was involved, trying to tally up all the drivers that got collected. Looked like the 93 of Jovan Anderson got a piece of it. Vincent Valvano, I think, might have just barely been able to skate through. But I'm counting at least maybe a good 10 to possibly a dozen race cars that got damage, and it's about 4 that I'm looking at that I will be shocked if they don't take a faster pair at this point in time.
Yeah, Shane Tyrion kind of got hit in the start of that incident and spun down through the grass, so looking for him. Not too much damage to the 8 machine, but I'm sure a little bit to the right front there, and possibly some toe damage if it was severe enough contact. But yeah, Mike Tellier, one of those drivers, just barely getting collected right there on the 5 machine, last week's winner. A lot of damage on that number 97 machine, and a lot of good misses at it as well. But unfortunately, a lot of those cars probably gonna have to take on their faster pairs here, only halfway through this event.
We've been talking the last couple of weeks about the glitch with the faster pair. I want to draw your attention to the 5 of Ty Smith. We're going to take another angle at this. I don't think I've ever seen this before. After he has his wreck up in turn number 1, a very interesting position for him to be in his pit stall, which looked like he actually had to disconnect and reconnect from the server because it actually had his nose pointing down to the ground.
Oh no!
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, watching it back, he drove back to pit road and his car just kind of did a front flip. Little issues towing it back to his pit stall there. That's definitely a first for sure as far as being that on iRacing.
Here's on board with the 21 of Michael Norman. Boy, that's a wild ride for David Durand. I mean, literally just got squeezed in between Bronson Stafford and that outside safer barrier. And as we're looking right now, it looks like Mike Tellier, Michael Norman, Connor Holden, Matthew Rodriguez, Bill Edwards, and David Durand. They are drivers that have taken on a faster pair from this first caution of the night. It's around the halfway point, which I guess is, not terrible as far as having to take on that faster pair. You then have to survive for the second half of the race. It'd be a lot worse if it were in maybe the first 5 to 10 laps of the race, but those are a couple of guys there, Mike Tellier and Michael Norman in particular, that want to keep themselves in the championship picture. Bill Edwards as well. And while we've been talking about drivers trying to make sure they're within the 80 points difference between themselves and the points leader, while we're kind of talking about drivers that could position themselves in the championship picture, on the flip side, there are drivers that are in championship picture right now that could be out of it by the time we finish this race.
Yeah, and Bronson Stafford, I mentioned, that pretty heavy contact at the nose of the 61 machine. Assumed he'd probably take on the fast pair here, being halfway through the event, and having all that nose damage. And he decided, at least currently at the moment, to try to get as much optional repairs done as he possibly can, and not, take on that fast pair and try to save it for later in case it gets involved in another incident. So definitely a fairly aggressive move there by the 61 machine and Bronson Stafford, considering that nose damage. We talk every week. These cars seem to be pretty well built. It's where they can take a beating, keep on ticking and try to stay in the drafts. But we've also seen the flip side of that. David Durand kind of showcased that at Irish Superspeedway a few weeks ago. You can get too much damage to where it's really, really difficult to kind of stay in the pack and in a draft enough of a chance to come back and try to contend for the win. So 61 machine decided not to take his fast spray here. Definitely could change a lot.
Not certain. We're going to follow up on this in a little bit. David Durand is currently shown as out of the race, but he did take on a faster pair, so he could possibly have been a driver that was hit with the faster pair glitch. We'll document if he comes back in or not, and it may look strange the way they're lining up, but based off of the choose cone rule, pretty much the entire field wants the inside line. Chicano says, all right, I'll take the top side and restart in second. Bronson Stafford going to move up there on the outside of row number 2 as well, as Dylan Poteet's going to get us back underway. We're almost halfway through here tonight in the B. Frank Cleaning Company 150.
And apparently the damage to the 61 machine, being able to restart there in the 4th position could definitely, help him out a lot, as he doesn't, he has a lot of cars actually in behind him to try to help him stay in that draft. But currently he's left out on the dry on the outside lane. Going to try to jump down here, probably behind Bill Edwards, and get into his draft and try to stay, with other drivers say in this lead pack. But, up front now, the 88 machine, the 21 machine, and Michael Norman goes to the race lead on the 31 machine. And Dylan Poteet, a little bit of help there from John Carazaro up there on the outside. A couple of Fords taking out the outside now.
Norman looking for his second win on the year. Dylan Poteet looking for his first, and you've got the Fords working together on the top side. Highest the 58 of Cannizzaro has run all night long. Vincent Valvano right there as well. There's a very limited number of blue ovals in the field, and most of them are right now up inside of the top 5. By the way, Christopher Tate got the lucky dog under that caution. So we've got ourselves a total of 17 drivers on the lead lap. Joey Chapman currently 1 lap down. Ty Smith and Jason Shuey is currently scored 8 laps down to the leader. Still at this point in time, David Durand has not returned back to the server, but I'll tell you what, things are looking a little dicey up here at the front. A lot of moving around here in what's just side-by-side battling.
Yeah, and behind him, you see all these guys kind of up there in the outside lane. Nobody really wants to kind of box themselves in, if you will, on the inside lane behind the 95 Michelin along kind of just because you don't have anywhere to go when you're stuck down there on the bottom lane. But John Carzaro, haven't really talked about him too much tonight. There's a lot of contact there behind Robert Kenny, but got turned right there, almost with contact there behind Shane Tyrion. But you know, obviously the 61 machine having his issues kind of plummeting through the field here and trying to stay just, you know, limping around the track, if you will, here at Daytona, trying to stay in the draft. Robert Kenny's going to try to make the most of it, obviously, here and get as many bonus points as possible, leading laps. As long as Chicano, pretty aggressive move right there off turn number 2. Looks to the outside zone. Poteet in the back straightaway for that second position.
Looks like Bronson Stafford, at least for the moment, is okay. Mike Tellier seemed pretty committed to pushing him. And now that he's pulled up to the back bumper of Shane Tyrion, the 61 has enough speed, despite that car obviously not being able to win a beauty contest. Looks like, at least for the moment, it's going to be competitive. And this is smart on the part of Bronson Stafford, because I kind of get the feeling we may not have seen our last big wreck of the evening. And while a lot of the other drivers that are up there in the top 5 in the point standings are already a faster pair in the hole, he still has his intact and might be able to use it if we have ourselves some late race restarts.
Yeah, it's definitely a really you know, impressive move, and obviously, like I mentioned, being able to choose the outside lane there and restart in the 4th position definitely helped him. You know, I was kind of worried being back there in the field, catching up on, you know, as the field was about to hit the green, he was probably going to lose the draft, being so far back there, almost some contact right there. Alonso Chicano chopping down in front of him to get in the inside lane, but I was definitely worried about, you know, not having enough cars behind him to kind of keep him up there, but obviously, you know, restart up there. He's going to turn the 95 machine into turn number 3 as the 95 tries to save it. Oh, it spins out right in front of Mike Taylor.
Down below the double yellow line, so out of harm's way with other oncoming traffic, but it will bring out the caution for the second time here tonight as a couple of drivers scatter down to the apron. And Michael Norman in the 21 is going to lead us back to the start-finish line.
I got to give credit there to the 95 machine. Alonso Chicano got turned by Bronson Stafford right in there behind him, entering turn 3, and got, you know, down on the apron, back on the racing surface, trying to save it all the way through turns 3 and 4, and it didn't take until off turn number 4 to finally spin the 95 machine around, and unfortunately, Mike Tellier nowhere to go. We mentioned just getting involved in an incident, taking on that faster car. Now he once again has a lot of nose damage on the 97 machine, and, you know, as to your point earlier, Bronson Stafford decided not to take that faster pair. A lot of others did. That definitely, you know, could play a pretty big factor right there into Mike Tellier's championship hopes.
Yeah, Mike Tellier was one of those drivers that had taken on his faster pairs, so we'll have to see if that front end damage going to affect him for the remainder of this race. Sometimes it looks like it's going to be detrimental and a driver's still able to be competitive. On the other flip side, sometimes it looks like it's not going to be hurting the car too much in speed, and then as soon as we get into a long green flag run, we don't see them up in the lead pack. So we'll have to see if this is going to hurt Mike Tellier's chances of staying up there at the front of the field, as pit road is going to be open. And yeah, I think everybody's going to come down here, if for no other reason, top off the fuel tank, because I think at this point in time, they still wouldn't be able to make it to the checkered flag.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be close for all these guys. I mean, we went about 25 laps, I believe, to start the race before we saw that first caution flag. So I'd have to assume these guys who would come down and top off, they actually might be right on the number, depending, you know, any agreement checkered attempts to, you know, make it on fuel. But, you know, someone else mentioned, too, there's contact apparently on pit road, but there's actually a second incident behind that incident. Alonso Chicano up front at 29 machine. Justin Duran tried to slow up to avoid that incident. The 48 machine, Cody Lamas, making his series debut here tonight. Unfortunately, didn't see any of that. So checking up in front of him and ran him over. And a lot more contact. Ty Smith, also Jason Shuey, some contact on the outside safer barrier. So a lot of cars getting a lot more damage out of that. And I'm not entirely sure exactly who you know, took on their factor for that first pit stop. But a lot more cars getting a lot more pieces of damage there in that incident.
David Durand has returned back into the server, right now being scored 1 lap down. Joey Chapman was the lucky dog under this caution, and it looks like the only driver under this caution period, well, now make it 2 drivers under this caution period that took on the faster pair, the aforementioned Cody Lamas, and also the 93 of Jovan Anderson. Christopher Tate stayed out, so it looks like he would be the one to lead us back to green, and Joey Chapman down on pit road now, going to get service for his Lucky Dog car, and he'll be starting at the tail end of the field in this upcoming restart. But Joey Chapman also running for a very special cause here tonight with this new livery on the 81, and we're going to be talking with him here, see if we can dial him up in just a moment for him to be able to give us a little bit of insight in the special tribute scheme that he is currently running. Hey Joey, Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys loud and clear.
Oh man, I mean, finally get back on the lead lap here. We're going to get to see if this 81 can work its way to the front of the field. But, you know, we were just documenting the fact here tonight, the new livery on that Toyota Camry. And we're just going to hand the mic over to you, let you be able to tell the folks here of what you're driving in tribute of here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me here as I try to get back around to the field. You know, it's crazy what happened in Kentucky the other day. You know, living in central Kentucky myself, waking up at 4 a.m. to 4 consecutive tornado warnings is a scary thing. And I got lucky that in my area that we were safe. However, there were so many other people that weren't fortunate and they lost everything. And there is so much devastation across Western Kentucky right now. And I kind of just wanted to highlight how anybody can get involved right now and help, because so many families they don't have homes, they're missing loved ones. So there's a number of ways that if you're interested that you can help these people in Western Kentucky build back strong. You can go to the Team Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. There is also the Western Kentucky Red Cross. They've actually set up a deal with Facebook for people to be able to donate online. And also, you can go to secure.kentucky.gov.com and you can visit that Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund, and you can make a donation of any sizable amount. And it's I believe it is a tax deductible refund. So anything you can give, be it money, non-perishable food items, anything to help people build back is such a big thing. It's important to build people up whenever these types of natural disasters happen. So anything that anybody can give to Kentucky, whether it be awareness, money, or non-perishables, would be a great thing. And guys, I hate to try to do your job for you, but I think we're going back green.
We are indeed. We'll let you get back to it. But again, best of luck there, Joey, and thank you for running that great cause there on that 81 machine here tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
So back on the lead lap. In the 16th position for this restart, Joey Chapman, as Christopher Tate leads the field down the back straightaway. 24 laps to go, and for some of these guys, is this go time? Is there a set number in your head at a particular super speedway of when all bets are off and it's just time to start to motor that thing to the front?
Yeah, definitely, you know, varies person by person. And, you know, a lot of these drivers usually do have this when they run in the super speedways, especially quite often. They kind of understand, you know, the limits of the moves they can make so late in the event, but also, you know, when they believe it's worth it to kind of get up there and risk it all, you know, for going for the race lead. But speaking of the race lead, 3 wide now up front, and something else interesting thing to note here, the 44 machine of Christopher Tate did not come down pit road there and stayed out on the racetrack. We were talking about those fuel numbers a lot of these guys kind of had in their head for coming down pit road there once again, even after we just had a caution flag. I believe almost everybody in the field can't make it all the way to the finish unless they somehow burn off a lot of extra fuel compared to what we saw in the first run. So for these guys who stayed out like Christopher Tate, they might be in a bit of a box here as far as this goes green for a while, as to if they can actually make it to the end of the race on fuel.
Of course, here on the front straightaway, you've got the sky boxes up above the front straightaway grandstands, and that's usually where a lot of the spotters will stand to call the races for their respective drivers. And normally, especially here at super speedways, when you indicate that you're double wide with somebody or 3 wide, it's usually indicated by car number. Well, there's no car number on the 44 of Christopher Tate, so if you're a spotter, how do you let your driver know that Tate's alongside you?
Great clips, probably.
You got great clips to your inside, Kenny.
Yeah, some form of recognitions, but identifications, but all you can do. But you know, rapper Kenny doesn't really care us what door number, what the door of that car number looks like, as he gets pushed at Rafi Rodriguez now. Rafi Rodriguez got involved with that incident we mentioned earlier. He burned his fast repair. Now he's up here second line on the outside lane, and mentioned, unfortunately, you know, last season in contention for that championship and kind of had some rough luck to start this season. And with the shortened season, and that kind of put him out pretty early on. And can't contend for the championship. But you mentioned earlier, these guys who aren't contending for that championship, all these guys are going really aggressively battling for points. He's one of those guys who really doesn't have anything to lose whatsoever, and he can get up here and try to battle for that race win and claim his first checkered flag of the season.
Yeah, was a multi-time winner last year and still chasing his first checkered flag of season 2. He has won a race, so to speak, this season, as he won the Dash for Cash back during the first Dega duel. And we'll have the second round of the Dash for Cash next week in the season finale at iRacing Superspeedway. Matthew Rodriguez going to look to go 2 for 2 as that victory locked him into that upcoming Dash for Cash. He's also going to be joined by Michael Norman, Bronson Stafford, and Tristan Maher. So not only do we get a champion crowned next week in the season finale, but also get to find out who's going to be raking in a little bit of cash by the end of that day.
Yeah, now kind of on the outside, Landon Shantirian trying to push him, and these guys really stacked up close together is obviously exactly what causes those incidents. The 44 machine, Christopher Tate is right in the bumper there. Robert Kennedy tries to get squared up and gives him a nice shove into turn number 3 to keep him into the race lead. And looking back there on that caution flag, the 44 machine, Christopher Tate was the only car to actually stay out on the racetrack. So with just 20 laps to go here, I'd have to imagine he probably has to come down pit road here in about 10 to 15 laps if this stays the way it is. So obviously the rest of these guys all, I believe, can make it on fuel without any drastic saving measures. So it might come down to also who's up front. I mentioned earlier that clean air kind of burns you more fuel when you're in the throttle longer. And so, being right close to that number, especially if we do get an overtime restart, I'm not entirely sure the 34 machine at 57 can make it all the way.
We talked with him just before, actually just when we went green as well. Joey Chapman restarted back in the 16th position, and he is already up in this lead pack, 4th on that outside line, currently in the 6th position. Another driver that's starting to make his way to the front, and debuting Jobin Anderson, the blue Mountain Dew machine, 6th on that inside line in the 93.
And Tom Bohr, mentioned him earlier, kind of up front, kind of got shuffled back and out in the back, and now he's was leading the outside lane, I should say, as Robert Kennedy and Shane Tyrion both together jump up in front of him in that outside lane, and now got to push for the race lead. But he's up here already battling these guys, trying to make the most of it.
So right now, up here in this lead pack, we've got Shane Tyrion, we've got Robert Kennedy. We saw Bronson Stafford up here in the early stages. He is still kind of limping that 61 machine around. Still is not taking on the faster pair, still hanging on to it for as long as he possibly can. But, you want to work with the fast cars, because if you work with the fast cars, you're in turn going to be fast. But at the same time, Tyrion, Kenny, Stafford, these are guys that are battling each other for a championship. So how difficult is it when everybody's in close proximity like this, and you're trying to gain points on a driver that is around you in the standings, but at the same time, you kind of have to work with them to keep your position at the front of the field?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, the green risers at the top, and the guys who consistently have really strong runs and kind of keep their nose clean and just kind of have some good luck on their side. They're always the guys up front, like you mentioned. You always kind of have to work with them, even if you don't want to kind of help yourself get further up. And I've been in a lot of situations like that before, battling for championships on plate tracks in the Superspeedway series, where it just really comes down to push as long as you can, help whoever you need to help yourself. And then at the end of the race, just try to basically execute everything perfectly and make sure you're the one finishing ahead of them. And obviously some bad luck can change a lot of things, and some big incidents we haven't really seen a whole lot of here tonight. Been in a fairly clean race to now, which usually always, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Talladega usually creates that pretty craziness at the end of the races. Just to mention that, Joey Chapman, the 54 machine, both kind of make some contact there after the race lead.
Yeah, and Robert Kennedy got down the apron, and he was having his hands full in the 34 car, as now they'll fan out 3 wide with Stafford jumping up to the top. Tom Bourne, last time we saw him in a Daytona race here in the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series last season, the legacy version of Daytona, and he visited, I believe, all 3 stories of the catch fence over in the Tri-Oval, so he's looking for a little bit of Daytona retribution. He was pushed to the front by Joey Chapman, but now look, driver's right, because Mike Tellier, Bronson Stafford gets the wall, and Christopher Tate's going to go around in the 44, and there's going to be a melee in the middle of the pack.
Big contact there. Bill Edwards, Michael Norman trying to avoid the incident and keeping it straight. Unfortunately, made heavy contact with each other and nailed that outside safety barrier right into Vincent Valvano, and all those cars extremely tore up, and a lot more of those cars, like I mentioned earlier, burning their fashion repair. A lot of those cars involved in that first incident. I believe Michael Norman already was a fashion repair in the hole, so they might be done here tonight after that incident.
He was indeed, as was Bill Edwards. Looks like Vincent Valvano getting a little bit of assistance back to pit lane from a fellow Mustang, and John Canonzaro, who also was collected. You see the right front damage on that Texaco Haviland Ford. Let's go back and take a look at what happened. It kind of looked like the first car that got out of shape, Christopher Tate, like he was able to get the thing pointed back in the right direction. It was kind of an aftermath wreck of everybody scattering to avoid him.
Yeah, it was kind of actually right in front of him. Bronson Stafford, as I mentioned, making good hay there with that damaged 61 machine. Unfortunately, just got a little too wild. We've seen a lot of these guys do here tonight on the updated Daytona. Caught that outside safety barrier, and Christopher Tate right behind, trying to avoid him as the 61 slowed down dramatically. Got clipped in the left rear quarter panel by Alonso Chicano, and unfortunately, like you mentioned, a lot of these guys is trying to pick a way to go and split-second reaction. Unfortunately, John Canizaro just kind of got right into the side of the 44 machine and kind of clipped everybody up with him.
Jason Shuey was involved. David Duran took a big shot there in the 29. Valvano, as you mentioned, getting sandwiched into the outside wall. And I think there were a couple of other drivers that got bits and pieces of the incident where Christopher Tate came back down into Canonzaro. Let's see if we can find out who those drivers were. Maybe a little bit of contact there for the 93 of Jovan Anderson into the back of Jason Shuey, but it looked like Shuey and Durand really were the two that took some shots further up when Valvano came back down the racetrack and Michael Norman came back down the racetrack. So about maybe 7 drivers involved in this one. And back to your point there on the heavy contact of both Michael Norman and Bill Edwards, 2 drivers that came into this race mathematically still in the championship picture. I mean, they've already used their fast repair. Now they're hoping that in the final 10 laps of this race that it's going to turn into a race of attrition, and they can kind of like vultures pick up those spots and be able to gain as many points as possible, still stay within that 80-point range.
Yeah, and obviously definitely determines, exactly how much damage both those machines have. Obviously, they have a ton of engine damage that kind of makes them have required repairs in the meatball flag and might kind of put them out of a chance to stay to lead the lap. But I think as much as damage fixed here as possible before the pace track comes back around, obviously, and puts them a lap down. Like you mentioned, hopefully they can kind of just count on some attrition and gain some more spots here in some last lap incidents.
Interesting. We ended up having most of the field come down pit lane with the exception of our current top 5. Tom Bourne, Joey Chapman, Mike Tellier, Robert Kenny, and Shane Tyrion. So they're not wanting to give up track position. Everybody else coming down pit lane, and a number of them were not involved in the incident. So is this driver's coming down, topping off the fuel tank just in case we end up going into some unlimited overtime green-white checkers?
Yeah, I would say so. That definitely, definitely determines or is determined by how much fuel they felt like they had. Robert Kenny and Shane Tyrion, 2 of those guys I mentioned, they've been running up front that entire run, kind of burning more fuel than the rest of the field. Kind of surprised they're the guys who didn't come down pit road. Around them for the most part did. But obviously they must feel like they could save enough fuel under this caution to gain that back. And I used to hear, I believe, like 1 lap of caution around Daytona would usually save you, or 3 laps of caution would usually save you about a lap that you would you would burn extra if you were on a green flag. So that definitely can go a long way here, especially if we continue to get overtime attempts later on this event.
Going to have a total of 17 drivers on the lead lap and go back green. David Durand was the recipient of the lucky dog under this most recent caution. Vincent Valvano appears to, at this point in time, taken his car back to the garage area. He was one of our long shot drivers here tonight that could have put himself into the championship picture with a good performance. Looks like that will not be the case. So now it's down to Joey Chapman and Mike Tellier as 2 drivers who could still get themselves in the championship hunt if they finish well here tonight. Of course, a win would certainly aid them in that regard, and they're going to both be starting up inside the top 5 with Chapman in 3rd, Mike Tellier in the 5th position. With the choose cone rule, Tom Bourne's going to be the leader. Bronson Stafford was outside in 2nd, Chapman in 3rd, and then Jovan Anderson was able to move from what would have been a 7th place starting position now up to 4th. Mike Tellier, John Canonzaro going to be in row number 3, followed by Robert Kenny, Connor Holden, Shane Tyrion, and Matthew Rodriguez.
You mentioned that choose cone kind of double up the field a lot more here than we have seen in the previous restarts. So obviously some of these guys taking that track position even if it comes on the outside lane. Matthew Rodriguez being the last guy on that outside lane. But Bronson Stafford taking on that faster pair of restarting on the front row could be a pretty interesting combination here in a couple of 12 laps here, I believe. We go back green. Could be pretty pins and needles here for the 61 machine trying to hold on to the championship lead.
5 drivers to keep an eye on. The only 5 that still have their faster pairs intact: Tom Bourne, Joey Chapman, Shane Tyrion, Dylan Poteet, and Alonso Chicano. Everybody else has burned their faster pair at this point in time, as we still have more than 10 laps to go. Mike Tellier with a little bit of blinking there. 3rd car in line. Looks like it's now settled out as that Toyota train pushing the Chevrolet of Tom Bourne out in front.
Yeah, 5 Toyota Camrys all linked up down there on the inside lane with another one up there leading in the outside lane of only 2 cars. But you mentioned Joey Chapman and Tom Bourne, the 2 race leaders, yet to burn their fastest pair. Obviously, that puts them in the best position possible here at the end of this race with just over 10 laps to go. In case they do get involved in an incident, they can burn that fastest pair and hopefully have enough time to drive back through the field. But Joey Chapman in a shot to push the 54 machine. Tom Bourne, who continues to lead here at Daytona.
And you are correct. The 54 is a Toyota. For some reason, visually to me, it looks like that's the front of a Camaro. I don't know why, but yeah, that is a Toyota indeed leading, and he might have a challenge from another Camry, Bronson Stafford, around the outside. Now, we know that Bronson Stafford's car was fairly competitive with the damage, but now after taking the faster pair on, we're going to see what he's going to be able to do. And we've talked about this week after week. It doesn't matter if we're at Daytona, if we're at Talladega, if we're at iRacing Superspeedway. If there is momentum and there is a lane, Bronson Stafford is the guy that's not going to be afraid to put his car there.
Yeah, we saw that last lap move he made there at iRacing Superspeedway just a handful of weeks ago. Not only did he come back from being 3 laps down after having those faster pair glitches you mentioned earlier, but he went 4 wide down the back straightaway there for the race lead and all but managed to get himself into victory lane in that event. And can't just short there in the 2nd position. But yeah, definitely he is proof, even after claiming a checkered flag early in the season, that he'll do whatever it takes to try to get more checkered flags and just try to continue to increase his points lead here heading into the next week.
Jovan Anderson making his debut here tonight. Would love to get a checkered flag here at Daytona on the outside line with help from Connor Holden. Jovan Anderson, a guy that I've raced with for years. We lovingly call him the Muffin Man is his nickname, and trying to see what he can do here at Daytona, leading about 4, 5, 6 cars on that outside line. They've got the numbers on the top side. Now the inside line's going to pick up Shane Tyrion, but for a brief moment, the inside line wasn't very formed up.
Yeah, I got 2 development cars back to back there. Connor Holden, we've seen a lot of issues kind of making contact with that outside safer pair when he's up there 3 wide. Took on his faster pair in that Valvoline Toyota Camry. He's got his teammate right there behind him, Dylan Poteet. They're both synced up there together in the middle lane currently, but we've seen them run that 3rd lane the last few weeks and so far here tonight. And, if it comes down to it, they may leave the 93 machine out and kind of work together up against the outside retaining wall.
But you've got the battle up here for the lead. You've got the battle for preservation behind them. Michael Norman, Bill Edwards, badly damaged, working together here in a tandem in 16th and 17th place. And let's remember back, Michael Norman, back in that Talladega race that he won, coming off of turn number 2, he's running in 7th or 8th position, got down to the apron when the leaders wrecked and found himself the race leader by the time they got to turn number 3. There's no saying that we couldn't see a big wreck here on the final lap of this race and enough drivers not be able to get their cars retired before Norman and Edwards get by. And Poteet, did he save that?
They all saved it.
Wow.
No caution flag currently. There it comes out now as a lot of those cars had to obviously check out for that incident. But yeah, Robert Kennedy, one of our championship contenders, and Christopher Tate, all those cars got turned around sideways and somehow, some way, obviously, excluding some of the damage they received, came out of that pretty much unscathed.
My goodness, the 31 was all kind of sideways. I mean, let's be honest, he was wrecking, he just never wrecked. And about 3, 4 drivers keep their hopes alive of possibly winning this race when it could have very well been over at that point in time. We should be able to get back green under regulations. Bronson Stafford is going to lead us back to our 4th caution of the night. Let's go back to turn number 1 and see what exactly almost happened.
As mentioned on those Valvoline cars, the 58 machine, John Carrazzo was trying to take them through out on the outside and was kind of up there. The 31 drifted up a little bit when they checked up, and Alonso Chicano, I'm not entirely sure if he was intentionally trying to make it 4 wide up the middle there or if he just didn't quite realize they were checking up, but kind of shoved his nose in there and just barely clipped the left rear quarter panel of the 31 machine. But to your point, basically wrecked with that fully going all the way around, but nice save there out of Dylan Poteet, and luckily for him, managed to keep that 31 machine pretty much pretty clean.
It really was only 3 drivers that got, if any, damage on their cars. Dylan Poteet, Robert Kenny, and Christopher Tate. And they all should be able to continue on. So now drivers, after the crazy running of that segment, get a chance to sit back, take a breath, kind of observe everybody around them, make plans for this upcoming restart. But do you plan for this race to end under regulation in terms of the moves you make, or do you maybe make plans to get yourself in a position for an overtime green-white checker? Because if we look back at the past 2 Daytona races this season, we have gone into overtime in only one, and that was in the season opener where we went 2 laps over the scheduled distance. Last week at the legacy version of Daytona, we ran just the 57 regulated laps.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely could shake up as far as the fuel numbers for sure. But I think if you're these guys, I believe we'll get the one to go signal pilot next time by, so we'll restart with about 4 laps to go. I think in this point in time, it's pretty much just push all the way to you see the checkered flag. I don't think there's any much that can really change, their outlook as far as the strategies to try to get the way up front is basically just try to push as soon as you get this restart. But the one thing this caution does do is help those guys who stayed out last restart. Tom Borden, I believe, John Van Anderson, and that 93 machine both stayed out there on the racetrack. So this obviously being in regulation helps them save even more fuel, and I assume all but guarantees them all to the finish, even if we get a couple overtime attempts here.
It's kind of surprising. This is the 6th race of the season, and up until this point, only 2 races have we gone over the regulated number of laps into overtime. The season opener at Daytona, and the race following that at iRacing Superspeedway. We went 10 laps over in that one, as we had, I believe it was 2 overtime green-white checkers. But since then, the doubleheader at Talladega, we ran the scheduled 30 laps in those. We ran just the regulated 57 laps last week at the legacy version of Daytona. So, point in time, we've been trending in the direction of these races finishing under regulation.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously that could change here. But one thing to note also, we've seen a lot of the last few weeks, including even last week at the old Daytona surface. A lot of these incidents usually happen on the last lap, to where there isn't a caution flag at all, and everybody kind of just has to jump through it. And you mentioned Michael Norman picking that win last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, in that Talladega doubleheader, avoiding that big one on the back straightaway. It's basically what has been the last few races, if I recall. A lot of these races kind of having those last lap incidents of the back straightaway, which are all too common here on the plate tracks, and that basically obviously creates a huge shakeup as far as who finishes where and who can make it through. So Ronson Stafford, actually, with the choose cone as the race leader, decides to choose the outside lane here for the restart. Bit of interesting call there out of the 61 machine, but maybe trying to get some help there behind him with the 4 machine.
Well, might also be planning for the Joey Logano patented phrase "okie dokie." Maybe try and be in the car that controls the restart, get ahead of Tom Bourne when they get to the start-finish line, tuck down in front of him, and those 2 Camrys be able to work together once again. It's going to be Joe Van Anderson lining up in 3rd. 4th place was going to be Connor Holden, but he's now dropping to the back, so John Cannizzaro is actually going to pull up to the outside of row number 2. Joey Chapman and Shane Tyrion will be row 3. Dylan Poteet, David Durand now up in the 8th position. Cody Lamas and Christopher Tate, they're going to complete the top 10. That's Matthew Rodriguez, Michael Norman, Alonzo Chicano, Bill Edwards, Mike Tellier, and Robert Kenny. Looks like Connor Holden is dropping to the rear of the field, so he will be 17th on this upcoming restart. Those 17 drivers on the lead lap. Jason Shuey, I'll tell you what, it looks like he might be out of the championship picture by the end of this evening, as he is still trapped 8 laps down in the 18th position. He was 6th in the standing, 67 points out coming into tonight. Vincent Valvano being scored in the 19th position, though he is out of the race and currently sitting on pit road getting repairs done, but effectively their evening's over. Justin Durand will be 20th, and Ty Smith in 21st. Going to be 4 laps to go in regulation here tonight in the B. Frank Cleaning Company 150 at Daytona. Bronson Stafford, the control car for this upcoming late restart.
Pacetrack pulls the safety of pit road. Just 4 laps to go here at Daytona. The green flag comes out for the restart. Is down the outside lane. A bit of a stack there behind the race leader, Bronson Stafford. As Shane Tyrion immediately looks to the inside there and ducks low in the 58 machine of John Cannizzaro, with the door immediately gets shut on him as they work their way into turn 1. Bronson Stafford currently holds on to the lead ahead of the 54 machine of Tom Bourne, but has worked their way through turns over 1 and 2. That's all who can push on the back straightaway.
Well, there was a lot of blocking at 140 miles per hour there on the front straightaway. Now as they start to get up to full song around 180, 185 down the back straightaway, let's see how wide these front drivers want to make their bumpers. As Thierry jumps to the top, nobody going to help him. He's going to start free falling back, and there's a lot of cars hungry to pass him in that inside and middle line.
David Duran, one of those cars, jumped up to the middle there and kind of out to dry. Now third in the outside lane. We saw him on his lid earlier doing a couple of flips. He took on his fastest pair. He's now back up here in the hunt and looking to try to turn around his season. We're just a few laps to go.
Bronson Stafford with help from a Ford on the top side in Cannizzaro, then a Ford on the bottom. Jovan Anderson pushing Tom Bourne. It was Stafford at the line that last time by. You almost wonder if maybe these guys are setting each other up for who's going to get their splitter back to the start-finish line first when that checkered flag is waving, because we could very well be coming down to a photo finish at Daytona.
Yeah, and it's all about who can get the runoff.
Contact in the back. That was Chicano and Kenny that got together, but they were down the apron. They kept it going. We are still green.
Yeah, and a big save there to Robert Kenny. May kind of keep his championship hopes alive, but he definitely needs a bit of a shake-up here at the front. As Bronson Stafford doing that, got clear into turn number 3 in front of the 54 machine of Tom Bourne, and now controls the race as they come around to 2 laps to go. Tom Bourne, though, right behind him in that 54 Toyota Camry now is clear of the outside lane without much help up there. He's kind of just tucked in the line and content for right now.
Bronson Stafford's trying to give himself a nice cushion for the points lead heading into the finale next week to try and get this championship. Tom Bourne, Jovan Anderson, Joey Chapman, these guys, they all just want to try and find victory lane. It's going to be a hungry pack of wolves behind that GoPro Toyota Camry down the back straightaway. Nobody stepping out of line just yet. Top line being led by Cannizzaro with help from David Durand. Stafford down to the apron. I think he thought the 54 might make a move, will blow the double yellow line, but Tom Bourne not showing his hand. Cannizaro's got the momentum on the top. He's going to get alongside out of 4.
And from help from the 24 machine, David Durant gives a nice push now. Coming through the trial was to take the white flag. It's a dead heat at the start-finish line. Too close to call, and the question is, will we see that once again when they come back around? And it's now the 58 machine. John Carazzato has the race lead as he worked away into turn number 1.
The white flag in the air push has now literally come to shove. Which line's going to have the momentum? Inside line for the moment. Stafford with help from Tom Bourne as the outside line got broken up. Let's see if they can reform on the back straightaway. Does Tom Bourne make a move here? He's got the apron available in 3 if he wants it. Jovan Anderson on his back bumper. Cannizzaro makes the charge back on the top side.
Little 2 box in there for the 4 machine. He's worked away through turns number 3 and 4 right here. He's going to try to get clear the 58 machine to John Carazzato and jump up to the outside lane around Bronson Stafford as they come to the start-finish line. Bronson Stafford going to try to make that car as wide as he possibly can as they come to the Travel Air Championship leader. Bronson Stafford gets his 2nd win of the season here at Daytona, becomes the first multi-time winner. It is a great job there defending the last few laps after taking control of that restart. He'll claim the checkered flag here tonight at Daytona as a huge crash there happens behind him.
Lamas, Jovan Anderson, Shane Tyrion all collected up in that one as they were sliding and smashing across the start-finish line from about 7th position on back. But Bronson Stafford's 2nd win of the season, as you pointed out, came in the points leader, and now with him winning, it's going to be interesting to see if Joey Chapman and Mike Tellier, if they were able to do enough to be within that 80-point range or not. It's also going to be interesting to see about some of the guys that we know were damaged in the closing stages, like Bill Edwards and Michael Norman. Bronson Stafford, with this victory, may only have about 1 or 2 drivers that mathematically would have a shot at wrestling the championship away from him next week at iRacing Superspeedway.
And if my math is correct, one of those drivers who won't have a shot is Robert Kenny, who entered this race in the 2nd position. We mentioned that contact he had there on the back straightaway. He finished in the 13th position, which only pays out about 5 points. Bronson Stafford got 75 for winning. That's a 70-point difference right there on top of the 19-point advantage she already had entering tonight. So if that's how it all works out, obviously including the bonus points as well, that might actually knock out the 34 machine, who's led this championship the entire season, out of a chance at heading into next week.
With that being said, that could be the end of the season for Michael Norman, Bill Edwards, and Mike Tellier, who all finished behind Robert Kenny, and obviously we're behind him in the point standings coming into tonight. So it's going to be interesting to see. We had 4 drivers in the championship hunt last season. We may be down to maybe even only just 2 drivers heading to next week that have a shot of winning the championship. Going to really be interesting to see how the points get calculated and find out who indeed is going to have a shot at Bronson Stafford, because we know that he's at least the one confirmed driver that's going to be battling for that championship trophy next week.
Yeah, I believe Machine Thierry might be that one other driver right on the cusp. I believe he's about 81 points out, not including bonus points. So as you mentioned, that 80-point cutoff as far as the maximum points you can get, that might be pretty tight heading into next week for the championship finale at Ironton Superspeedway.
Well, Bronson Stafford with his second win in the last 3 weeks. A big one here tonight as a bit of an adventure for him. Got involved in an early wreck, decided not to take on the faster pair under 2 caution periods. Then took the faster pair on with 10 laps to go, worked his way to the front, and kept everybody in his rearview mirrors. Let's take a look at the finishing results from this one. And from Bronson Stafford back to, I think it was Dylan Poteet. Those were the drivers that made it across the start-finish line, pointed in the right direction. Connor Holden back through Cody Lamas. They were all spinning across the start-finish line after the 93 got turned, coming back to the checkered flag. But great performances there by guys like Jovan Anderson, Cody Lamas making their debuts here tonight. Dylan Poteet in his final race of the season, a 6th-place performance, and really going to be interested to see about the calculations there for Joey Chapman, because he was one of our long shot drivers with a good run that might have been able to get in that championship picture. Is 4th place here tonight going to be enough?
Yeah, not quite sure. As you mentioned, definitely could be pretty close. But obviously, with Bronson Stafford picking up the victory here tonight, that obviously knocks a lot of guys out, as we were talking about, out of contention. But Jovan Anderson mentioned making his debut here tonight, getting turned right there. Unfortunately, was running third as he entered the tri-oval, and just that short span of just a few hundred feet, got turned around in the front of the field, and unfortunately lost 6 positions down into the 9th position. In his debut. But obviously a great run for him tonight. We're interested to see if he races next week and how much of a factor he'll be for that race win next week.
Here's a look at the rest of the drivers outside of the top 10. The most notables, of course, Robert Kenny there, second in the points coming to this one. Bill Edwards and Michael Norman, who were in the top 5 in the standings, finishing in 13th, 16th, and 17th. And to your point as well, as mentioned, with the rather unorthodox point system here, doesn't pay out a whole lot if you don't finish inside the top 10 each week. A lot of the max points are up inside of those top 10 finishing positions. So a lot of points going to be lost for those drivers in particular, and subsequently possibly a shot at battling for the championship next week. Ty Smith can be the last driver to finish in the 21st position, as we had a total of 17 drivers finish this race under their own power. But Bronson Stafford going to get to celebrate in victory lane for the second time this season. We'll be talking with him in just a few moments down in victory lane. Let's talk first, though, with a couple of the guys that finished right behind him in the podium position. And how about John Cananzaro bringing it home with a podium run here tonight in 3rd place? Let's talk with him now. Hey, John, Lucas, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, I do.
And I'll tell you what, we definitely know that Daytona is a racetrack of unpredictability, but maybe even more so here tonight, because so many different drivers with so many different agendas. We had drivers that were trying to preserve their championship opportunities. We had drivers that were trying to give themselves a championship opportunity with a good run. Then we had drivers like yourself that were just out there trying to get a checkered flag before season's end. So you're getting ready for a restart in the closing stages, a limited number of laps left. What kind of energy were you guys feeling out there? Because it looked like that top line, it would get a run, then it would die, but then they made a comeback again on that final lap.
Well, we had a good run. I got Bronson to the lead, and I was hoping that the 93 could push me out front, and then I just start blocking like I'm some sort of Joey Logano on roids. But I guess we had a hurt car behind him, and we couldn't get the run that I had helped with Bronson. So it's what it is. We did what we could, side drafted all I could, and I mean, 3rd's not bad for having to deal with getting ditched a couple of times during the race.
Yeah, you mentioned that last lap, obviously having last season's champion David Duran right there in tow behind you. You're kind of planning on, maybe trying to push the 54 machine. If he decided to jump up in front of you there down the back straight, what was kind of your mindset as far as coming around, obviously trying to get around both of them for the race win here?
Had the 54 come up off too, I probably would have either laid back a little bit and got the run out of 4 and hoped I got there to the line first. Otherwise, just push him to the win and get what I can out of it.
We obviously saw a lot of drivers have to take their faster pairs on in the early stage of this race, in the first 2/3 of this race. It seemed like at least this week, at Daytona, a lot of the wrecks that we saw, a lot of drivers would get collected up in. Most of the wrecks we've seen in the past couple of races at Daytona, there have been 2 or 3 cars involved, and a lot of drivers have been able to make their way through. Is it the nighttime conditions with everybody all packed up as close that you think led to as much carnage as we saw here tonight? And with that being said, just how difficult was it to strategize to keep the faster pair intact?
Me and Vinny the whole race had just made the plan right out in the back until we know we can go to the front, which worked pretty well. We got around most of the wrecks. The wreck I got stuck in, unfortunately, it's nowhere to go. You see one guy wrecking, and all of a sudden you're in it. There's no time to brake, no time to turn, just hope and pray. So once you're all packed up like that, it's eventually something gives, and you have to hope you're not in it.
Well, we end up seeing a lot of times in races drivers that qualify for the Good Samaritan Award, and we'll give that to you here tonight. We saw you pushing Valvano back to pit lane there after that one wreck. But, man, a great run for you here tonight, John. 3rd place in the penultimate race of the season. Congratulations. And now we'll hand over the mic to you for some thank yous, sponsors, and shout-outs.
Yeah, my father, some shots racing. You guys put on the broadcast, especially Valvano. Me and him strategizing our race. He's a great guy in these super speedways. He's a really big help for me. So thanks to him. He helped me get to the front and spot me those last few laps because he was already out. So yeah, big shout out to him.
That's John Canonzaro, 3rd place here tonight at Daytona International Speedway. Congratulations once again, and best of luck next week at iRacing Superspeedway. Maybe we could see you close out the season with a victory here in this Ford Mustang.
All right, thank you.
And he gave it a shot there on the final couple feet to the start-finish line, but comes up just about a half a car length short. Let's talk with tonight's runner-up finisher, Tom Bourne.
Oh my god.
Hey, Tom, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Well, man, I'll tell you what, you gave it a heck of a try there out of turn number 4. Almost able to pick off the 61 to get your first win on the season, but, in hindsight, would you made that move just a little bit earlier, do you think you would have gotten him, or was that all you could do?
If I made it coming out of 4, I probably would have been able to get him. I'm out here racing for wins. He's out here racing for a championship. No big deal. It's whatchamacallit. It's just team racing at this point, and whatever can help bring the team a championship. That's all I'm for.
Obviously, we got the entire championship battle going on there, as you mentioned. But, interesting to note, obviously, you showed up in your first race, I believe, of the season here at Daytona. So you didn't quite race the season opener that we had just a few weeks ago. But, the new updates to this Daytona International Speedway we had on Tuesday from iRacing, the new textures, surfaces, and the new safety barriers on the straightaways, does that kind of change the grip level at all, leaving the space, if you will, down the straightaways with kind of limiting that space to the extra safety barrier?
I really didn't feel anything different. I honestly didn't even know there was an update on Tuesday. So I kind of just raced it like I've always raced Daytona, very patient and everything. And, luckily we were there at the end, didn't have to use my fast repair, missed a couple wrecks, and, move on from there.
Hey, you talk about not having to use your fast repair. You were one of a very few number of drivers that didn't have to take the fast repair on. I mean, is there a method to strategizing of where to position yourself so that way you avoid the wreck when and if it happens, or does it all just come down to chance and luck?
It's a little bit of both. There's a lot of, obviously, super speedway racing has a lot of luck there, but like I said, I've come to the conclusion, and the whole team has really come to the conclusion, in other leagues at least, to race in the back and be patient. Obviously, this is a fun league, and everybody's going hard from the drop of the green flag. But I've come to realize that my best luck at super speedways happens when I only go in the last 10 laps and make sure I have a car at the end.
Well, Tom, a great run for you here tonight in your season debut. We obviously saw you run last season, but first start of the year here tonight at Daytona. Great performance for you there in 2nd place. And now we're going to give the opportunity to thank some sponsors, do some shout-outs.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being on the on the car every week, and putting on an amazing broadcast week in and week out like you guys do. G Fuel, Player One Coffee, Sky Motorsports for keeping me on the team and slowly performing like I should. But other than that, Matt, Rod, and Mike for putting on a great league and whatnot. And my girlfriend here, she's down in North Carolina right now taking a police exam. I know she's stressing over it. I have no doubt in my mind she's gonna pass it. I love you. And we move on to next week.
That's Tom Boren, runner-up here tonight at Daytona International Speedway. Congratulations on a great run, and if we see you next week, best of luck in the finale at Racing Superspeedway.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's go down to Victory Lane. Can't believe it. We ended up having 3 multi-time winners last season. This is our first multi-time winner of Season 2, and it's Bronson Stafford, the guy that's going to be taking the points lead. Question is, by how much into next week to try and win a championship? Let's go down and talk with him now. Hey, Bronson, it's Lucas and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Man, I'll tell you what. Ever since you put this car in Victory Lane a couple of weeks ago at Talladega, it just seems like the momentum is going upward and has no signs of stopping. You had a top 5 run last week at the Legacy version of Daytona. Tonight, you pick up win number 2. You came in as the points leader. So, I mean, the confidence level for the championship next week's got to be pretty high, right?
Yeah, I think did a quick look at points, and at least over Kenny, it was like 89 points. So that's pretty comfortable. But you can do 97 in a race, so it's not quite locked up yet. But I mean, we'll have to see how it all shakes through when it's all fully updated. Because I'm not sure if other people moved around or whatnot. But yeah, it definitely helps. I mean, going from 19 points to anything more positive going into one race to go is always good.
Well, Bronson, first of all, congratulations again on your victory here tonight. But, want to mention that restart there and that decision. Obviously, the choose cone here in the Super Series series is a bit of a unique rule for a Super Series series. And, on that final restart with just 4 laps to go, you decided to choose the outside lane up there. And unfortunately, we saw the 4 machine just behind you get an EU penalty. Was there any kind of team games you were trying to play there with the 4 machine to choose the outside lane, or were you just trying to hope you weren't, box yourself in there at the end in case someone jumped out in front of you?
It's more Tom was the teammate, and we're just trying to figure out how we can maybe split the lines up, and whatnot. I actually had a bad start. I waited too long to jump, and the green actually came out, so the bottom just rolled better. But I was able to get a really good push there from John, and was able to get down in front of Tom, and I think with 2 to go, and at that point the engine won't really blow, so we were just able to push the whole last couple laps. And then obviously he tried to make a move off of 4, but I think it was a little late, didn't have the help kind of deal. So we got the 1-2 out of it. But yeah, it's a shame we have with the 4, but I think we see it every week towards the end. I think guys just try and wait so late to make that call for high lane or low lane, and they just barely clip it kind of deal.
Now, obviously, super speedways, very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. You never know where the big one might strike, when it might strike. With that being said, we were kind of talking about the different drivers with the different agendas coming tonight. We had drivers that were just out there trying to win. They're not in the championship battle. You had drivers that tonight could win their way into the championship picture. But on the flip side, we had a handful of drivers, including yourself, that are just trying to keep yourself up there at the top of the point stands, or at least within the top 3 in the point stands, keep yourself in the championship picture. So how do you, going into a race like this, how do you strategize to preserve where you currently are in the point standings while you've got other drivers all around you that are out there just trying to do everything they possibly can to be the first one back to that checkered flag?
Honestly, yeah, I'm not sure. It's kind of at the moment you kind of make decisions kind of deal, because coming in I didn't have a plan. It was really I knew Kenny was probably going to be trying to points race as well, and I was like, all right, I'll kind of take the same approach. And I mean, we hooked up in qualifying unplanned and everything, and started side by side again this week unplanned. And we were just trying each to lead the most laps, and go. I remember he was leading. I was counting how many laps he was leading, and I'd count how many I was leading. And it's just little things that you do subconsciously, but overall, I mean, it's a super speedway. The biggest thing is just trying to keep yourself in good position, and I actually ended up getting wrecked from the front the one time. Didn't burn the fast repair until the second last yellow or whatever, and it worked out really good. I was able to get back to the front with everyone taking the bottom, and I restarted literally on the front row. So honestly, kind of lucked into that. For some reason, no one took the high side, but sometimes that's what you gotta have. You gotta have luck for super speedway races, and unfortunately, Kenny and them didn't have good luck tonight, but we did, and it now just kind of makes it a little bit easier for 1 week left.
Going to be definitely interesting to see what the scenario exactly is going to be heading into the season finale at iRacing Superspeedway, which, oh, by the way, was a track we saw you be able to come from 3 laps down to finish up inside of the podium there. So obviously very good when it comes to numbers at that Superspeedway as you try and close this out with a championship. But congratulations on the win here tonight. Congratulations on being the first multi-time winner of Season 2. And now we're going to turn the mic over to you for some Victory Lane thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, definitely. We got Steak and Shake with Matt Rod and Thompson Caterpillar and everything on the cars. We have obviously you guys, FRN everywhere on the cars. Evil Controllers, some Speed Shop, the Cage. Just everything that makes it happen, really. Like Matt and Mike do a great job running the series. You guys do a great job broadcasting. And I know like it was all announced and stuff over the last week that we're switching over to a new thing, but like obviously Garrett's been huge on letting the series run here and everything like that, and just everything that makes it happen and possible, and it's always a lot of fun. So
Well, Bronson Stafford with the victory here tonight, making preparations potentially for that championship next week in the season finale as he takes the B. Frank Cleaning Company 150 at Daytona. Congratulations once again, Bronson, and best of luck as you prepare for next week.
thanks, Seth.
So as tonight's penultimate race comes to a close, it's interesting because I was kind of looking through all the bonus point scenarios and everything, and to be honest, not really much of that is going to be coming into play in what the points positioning is. Fastest lap of the evening was Justin Duran. Most positions picked up from start to finish was Dylan Poteet. So really it's just going to come down to where you finished and if you led a lap or not.
Yeah, definitely. And the most laps led, worth about 10 bonus points as well. So you heard Bronson Stafford talking about just subconsciously trying to think about who was leading the most laps there during the course of the event. And obviously, the wait for the official word, the word on that, and who has those 10 bonus points, which could shift the points pretty dramatically as far as if Bronson Stafford got it, he can get 10 points ahead, or if someone else gets it, he can get 10 points closer. But heading into next week, we mentioned this point system. If you finish outside of the top 10, you only receive 5 points, no matter where your finishing position is. So, if for some reason, obviously no curse, hopefully would be held. But if Bronson Stafford has some issue next week and he finishes outside of the top 10, and a guy like Robert Kenny gets up there, wins the race, and gets a ton of bonus points with it, it's still mathematically possible for that to shift in his direction. So, just finishing outside of top 10, that's pretty easy for it to happen. No matter what situation he's in. If he finishes just 11th, that might be enough to where it kind of shifts back into the hands of Robert Kenny or somebody else trying to battle him for that championship. So it's going to be really exciting all race on for sure next week, and especially those guys fighting for those most laps led.
And especially with the fact as well, we've consistently been seeing 20-plus car fields week after week. So there's a lot of positions and a lot of points on the table heading into next week. Now, we heard 97 points is the maximum amount of points that you can get if you get all the bonus points and get the laps led and get the pole position and, of course, win the race. We heard that unofficially, we haven't gotten the official word of what the point standings look like going in, but we heard that unofficially it's looking like possibly around 89 points between Bronson Stafford and Robert Kenny. That says to me that it's a 3-horse fight because Shane Tyrion came into this race only 7 points behind Kenny, third in the standings, and he finished up inside the top 10 in the 8th position. So it looks like it may be the teammates, the 61, the 88, and the 34 to battle it out for the championship next week.
Yeah, that would definitely be a pretty interesting team strategy between all three of those, 3 championship contenders. But yeah, as mentioned, Shane Tyrion getting that nice finish. I believe he actually will leapfrog Robert Kenny depending on who gets more bonus points here. And I believe he'll leapfrog Robert Kenny and be in second now, runner up to Bronson Stafford heading in the championship finale. But still, pretty big cushion, Bronson Stafford has over the rest of the field. So as long as he can just try to have a nice consistent run next week, it'll be pretty difficult for anybody to overthrow him from that championship lead. But that doesn't mean that it's still not out of the realm of possibility.
It's also going to be really interesting, too, because we documented even here tonight in this race, those drivers in particular, we usually see them all around each other in the same place at the same time. And more often than not, it's usually up at the front of the field. But next week, iRacing Superspeedway, it got swapped to the season finale here in Season 2. We talked about it in the first race this season, how they're able to take it 5 wide, 6 wide. They've got 7 wide available with the apron there on the front and back straightaway, and they're not afraid to use it. So with that being said, and the championship on the line, you got to think that the nerves are going to be pretty high for those 3 drivers in particular, because let's be honest, their championship hopes kind of rest in another 17, 18 drivers' hands.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm really intrigued to see what kind of strategy Bronson carries into that week. Obviously we've seen him every single week the last few weeks being up front, be really aggressive and be, the aggressor and kind of put himself in really tight situations that sometimes work out and sometimes don't. And most of the time it's paying off for him. But, heading into next week with that cushion he has, obviously, maybe he decides to play a little safer. And I'm intrigued to see if he decides to take that approach and be a little more methodical, or if he's going to just try to keep doing what he's doing, not change it up, and try to stay up front, get as many laps led as possible, and try to claim those bonus points. And you got to think, obviously those two other guys, Shane Thierry and Robert Kenny, definitely be on the aggressive, 11 meter the entire race, trying to get up front and keep the track position as long as possible.
Well, coming into this season, David Durand was the defending champion. He will not be in the championship picture next week, but it'll be interesting to see when the checkered flag waves at iRacing Superspeedway who the defending champion will be when we go into the confirmed third season of the TNR Sunday Superspeedway Series. We'll be finding out the answer to all these questions when we get to the season finale next Sunday night at iRacing Superspeedway. Should be a good one. We'll fill you in on what the championship scenario looks like in pre-race ceremonies next week, as I believe there's still some adminship looking back at calculating points and everything going on right now. So we'll leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger and let you know what it looks like for who's going to battle for the championship next week. But Lucas, it's been a great one here tonight to set up that championship battle at Daytona. I appreciate you joining me in the booth.
For sure, Seth. Always a pleasure.
Thanks to everyone that tuned in tonight. We'll see you guys next Sunday evening for the season finale of Season 2 of the TNR Sunday Super Speedway Series. Green flag scheduled to fly at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, for Lucas Cram, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, folks, as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.